So you know how we're always talking about the best fit between the field instructor and the student? What does that mean to you folks? What does that what comes to mind?
Well, I guess in terms of thinking about best fit, I guess I would think in terms of the ideal that it would be no struggles, and struggles. I mean, I think there has to be some conflict to have any good relationship, but no struggles in terms of understanding what the purpose is, why we're getting together, why we meet on a regular basis, what roles are that we have, and how to make the best out of it. That's sort of the structural piece. The other best fit is, as I think, knowing the person other than just as a student, as an instructor, field instructor, knowing them in terms of their theories for practice or their theories of practice, or perhaps seeing some development and growth that they had before going into field placement. Those kinds. That's what I think about.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
And to piggyback off of that, more of the theories for practice, I remember when I was looking for my first year field placement, I thought I can do most things as long as I really like the person that I'm working with, or that's instructing me, or supervising, all of that kind of stuff, which led me to, I think, Regina initially at the City of Portland Refugee Services, and then seeking out an MSW in Vernon, knowing that the theories were very similar. That was something really important, that I knew I could do kind of whatever work, but as long as I had that support, a semi-established relationship, and somebody that understood where I was coming from in practice and worldview.
And
I just want to add, I don't know that it has to be the exact theories for, but I do think it's important that there are some similarities in the theories for. I think there's something to be learned from contrasting theories for, but if they are too great, if they really are too great from one another, I think it puts the student intern in a position of either being in constant conflict or subverting their theory for in order to make sure that they are fitting with their field instructor or supervisor's theory for. So I think there has to be some connection.
right.
Yeah.
Do you think it's realistic to try to determine that, like when students have interviews for the field placement?
I know, I realized as I said that and then listening to people in seminar what the reality is of that and how could it become more of a reality, so that you don't get really jazzed up on where you're going to be for your field placement, get really excited, and then miss the piece, making sure that jives really well with the person that you're going to be working with, too. So getting, keeping all of that in mind.
Right.
I'm not really sure where the space could be or how that could really...
Well, maybe I appreciated your comment, Jennifer, in terms of you knew you could do whatever the expectations, whatever the work happened to be, the learning, you'd be able to do it whatever the environment is. And maybe if we can get students to think about, I'm going to do and I'm going to learn wherever I happen to be, put that aside. Then when they're doing their interviewing, when they're being interviewed and they're interviewing, that their focus is on finding out about that person who's going to be their field instructor and their supervisor more than about the agency.
Right.
Because I don't, I guess the way I think about it is I don't think we have perfect agencies. I don't think we have perfect learning experiences or work experiences. The fit we're talking about is the fit between people, and the school's whole focus is on the establishment of relationships that are built upon power with rather than power over. And so probably the stronger the relationship is between the student and the field instructor, the better the placement's going to be anyway, regardless of where it's going to be.
Yeah, see, I mean, I think that's really well said. My worry is that and I think it's a natural inclination that students, one, are anxious, am I even going to find a placement?
Yeah.
And then two, their focus is on the program, the organization, the population, the field of practice,
Yeah.
which is important. It's not not important,
Mhm.
but you could have all of those things be perfect, exactly what you want, and then if you have someone working with you in a supervisory role, your instructor, who's very different from you, who, there isn't a good fit, that, I mean, I've unfortunately had situations, my own supervisory relationships, where, my supervisor, in order for me to be doing things properly, I had to do things the way my supervisor did them, or you have someone who's a perfectionist, or you may not have the opportunity, if you're doing an employment situation, to, you certainly make sure
Right.
the mission of the organization is, or the program is, going to be consistent with your values and so forth. But I think what I worry about that happens with students, and I've seen it happen, is they'll sometimes even interview at a place, and the place will say, well, we'll figure out the field instructors later, and then they take the placement against my suggestion. And, what I say to them is, this could work. This is, you've just signed a blank check. It might work, it might not work. And, I hope it does. I'd encourage you to go back and try to identify who this person is and interview them, because I don't want to find ourselves in September with you being in the perfect program, population, field of practice, and not feeling like you have a teaching, learning relationship,
And I think
Go ahead.
And I think that's a really valid point. I think to emphasize that this is a learning experience, because I can hear this little voice in we'll get stuck with any supervisor when we get out in the real world experience.
Yeah.
But to really emphasize, but you don't have to battle that right now. Right. Like, that's not what the battle should be. Like, you should really have a nice fit. This is about a learning experience. And really trying to emphasize that piece when they go for their initial interviews. And if that sort of thing happens, or if they're like, I really love it, but I don't know, but I think I really love the placement, so I'll just deal. We have to deal enough in our lives. So really emphasizing that this is a learning experience.
Right.
And you should have it the way it's comfortable for you.
Right. And I think that, and I think we're trying to do that, but I think the more that students pay attention to how they learn, that, if students went into those interviews and they had a fairly good idea about their own learning style, then maybe they could ask questions or pay attention in a way, whether it's a group interview or if it's one-on-one, really kind of hone in on the style, or even to have a conversation with a person about, well, what's your learning style? So, and certainly different learning styles can work well together, as long as everybody knows, how I think and how you think, and then we can blend that together.
Yeah.
But that probably is my biggest worry when students are getting placed.
I had this thought about helping students, and in order, I think, for field instructors to feel as though it wasn't just one-sided, maybe for both of them, is that you present a situation, whether it's a micro, mezzo, macro level case, and the two of them respond to what they see, how they assess it, and what would they see as the key issues, and then we would know. I mean, I think we have to do disclosure here. Truth in advertising is that we had just a truly valuable opportunity of 2 semesters of classroom learning, teaching experiences of really focusing on theory for practice and theory of practice, and learning styles and teaching styles and consultation style. We had that opportunity, and I know that everyone can't do that, but I do think that if you were to present the two of us before this experience has happened of being a field instructor for Jennifer, you had presented us with a case. I think we would have come at the issues, as Jennifer said earlier, in a similar fashion.
Mm-hmm.
We would have looked at the assessment very similar, and our approaches to addressing it might have some differences, but they'd be far closer. And I think probably the way we do our weekly interactions, the way we talk about issues is that if there is a difference, if there is a different perspective, we continue to talk back and forth until we get to the place where, yeah, that's what we both understand.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
We're just looking at it a little bit differently,
Right.
because of experience, because of professional experience, and our time that we've been working on this thing called a theory for,
Mm-hmm.
and what our preferred theories of are.
Mm.
So I think if maybe a case would be a good way to
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
to let
think that's
people.
a good idea.
I think
Yeah.
so too.
Yeah. What I really like about seeing the two of you work, and when I get to join in on those conversations, I mean, I feel like it's a learning opportunity for all of us, and I feel like we're colleagues.
Mhm.
You know, I don't. It's not. You know, and you know, probably most of us have had supervisory relationships where you really felt like you were always being kind of directed, told what to do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, haven't had a new thought in a while. You know, those. You know, but my experience when we get together for a field visit, or we just get together to kind of touch base, it's very exciting. I mean, a lot of it has to do with very exciting work that you've been up to, really, for the last 2 years. But I also like what gets generated between the three of us, and you know, and we could sit around and just talk foolishness, but we don't. We really stay focused on
Yeah.
on the work, and I think it's really exciting.
Yeah.
You know, and I
I
always
agree.
learn stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Me too.
So, you know, we've had a chance to work together for a couple of years, and I know I've tried not to, but I think I harp a little bit about always, you know, trying to remind the students to be a graduate student. What's your thought about that? Was my harping helpful, or what did it mean to you?
Yeah. So I think what that means to me is taking your field placement and ratcheting it up to the next level. You know, so that is really critically thinking. And then not just critically thinking, but then once you see something, well, what are you going to do about it?
Right.
You know, rather than just like, this is happening, it's really annoying. You know, really, this is your education, you know. I think the way that, and I can only speak for myself, put on the microphone. I think I can only speak for myself in saying that this time around, I really was going to take kind of control of my education. And so that's what graduate work meant to me. Not only in my field placement, but in my education, if I wasn't liking something that was going on, to really take ownership of it and make that change happen. Which I think speaks to my theories of social work, you know, engaging and, but really ratcheting up. My graduate work has been a lot different than my undergraduate in that way.
Yeah. What does that mean to you, Vernon?
Well, two things. One, I would concur with Jennifer. It's the expectation that it's creation as well as absorption of new knowledge and new learning and understanding, and that as a graduate student, the expectation is that you take the undergraduate education that you have, you take what you're getting in the classroom, and you see whether or not it works for you, whether or not it works for other people, and then create new knowledge if you need to, and new learning. And so that's one of the things it means. The other thing that it means is, and this was my first thought when you said it, is because I have a very strong opinion about students who are doing their internships, and that is they are students and they are learning. And I don't say that in a demeaning way.
Right.
I say that in a way of take the opportunity of using this as a learning experience rather than it becoming a job. And so when you first said it, I was thinking, yes, they're graduate students, and enjoy that. Enjoy that opportunity,
Right.
because you're going to be
Right.
you're going to be getting supervision soon enough in the world of work, and this is a real chance to engage in consultation or engage in supervision if that's what works for you, and to push back against an organization that may not have the same theory for practice you have, or colleagues that don't have the same theories for or theories of. So it's an opportunity to push back, because after all, you are a graduate student. Yeah.
And I'd piggyback off of that too, with at the graduate level starting to shift what your idea of education is, and try very, very hard to stay in the process and not always looking to the outcome.
Yeah.
So not looking to the grade, not looking to this, not looking to that, and like, oh, well, what do they want? Thinking more, well, what do you want out of this?
Right.
Because you're in a program and you should then be able to argue. And it's been my experience that if you have valid, and not argue but if you're needing a different way to get something done, to present your case and get it done. Because I think what happens when we're so focused on the outcome is then we get housebroken. And that can happen both in the classroom and in our field placement. And so to really take the years that you're here to engage in that process, so that when you leave as a social worker, your education hasn't been about housebreaking, it's been about engaging and doing things differently.
Right.
And hopefully
Growing.
then you take that into your practice.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah.
Well said. What I say to students a lot is, and I think it's important to think about this when they're interviewing for the field placement, and or even before that, deciding where they want to interview for the field placement. Most of the time, students will come to me when I meet with them the first time, and they will, majority of the time, want a field placement doing what they've already been doing, because they have experience. And what I say to them is, most of us have experience being workers or volunteers. But unless you've had multiple master's degrees, most of us don't have as much experience being students. And so what I say to them is think about an opportunity that you're going to stretch yourself, that you're going to try something new, that you can expand your skills, be exposed to things that you haven't been exposed to as a social worker. And all you really have to do is ask really good questions. And I think, again, getting back to the grade, even though field is pass-fail, I think people are really focused on not making a mistake, and passing, making sure that, they pass the course. I hope after, more work together, I think that changes for most students. So close.
To what we've been talking about, to think again about that fit, is I think it's important for students and the field instructor, is that if you're going to not just focus on outcome, you're really going to focus on the learning and the process that's going on, is both parties have to suspend disbelief.
Right.
The field instructor can't say, "I can't believe you asked me that question," and the student can't just constantly look at things and say, "I can't believe they operate this way." You got to suspend disbelief and accept that this is what happens. Now, how do you make sense out of it, so that you truly are learning it rather than just taking it in because that's what happens. That's what your supervisor told you or your field instructor told you. Right. And as a field instructor, for me anyway, if Jennifer asks a question or if she makes a statement or whatever, I try not to overreact. I laugh about that because I don't think I overreact.
No.
I don't know.
No.
But what I want to do is I want to allow the space, the room, the environment, the place for us to be able to talk through and really get a good understanding of what she meant to ask, what she meant to say, how I heard it, what the message ought to have been interpreted as, and that we do that back and forth by suspending disbelief.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm never surprised by the outstanding things you do, and I'm never surprised if you were not to do something outstanding.
Right.
Which I happen to be fortunate that I've only seen outstanding.
Right.
Yeah.
But that is actually where I was going, what I was thinking about when you say that not outstanding things.
Mhm.
That, and I understand, I don't like screwing up. I don't like making mistakes. But when I think about it, some of my biggest learning has been when I screwed up, when I made a mistake.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing that I want to convey, to the students that I work with, is that, not that I want people to be careless or sloppy or whatever and make those kinds of mistakes, but to take some risks, to speak your mind, to obviously be respectful, professional, but to find your voice and use it. And if you make a mistake, chances are you're going to have a really big opportunity to learn something that, when I think about the things that I have made, when I've made my mistakes, I remember the things that I've learned, and it really stays with me. So I think that's important,
Yeah.
and I try to convey that to students, because I think that, that's going to happen when you're trying new things. I mean, think about all the new things we do. At first, it's you have to really concentrate. It's hard, Think about when you first drove a car. It was, how in the world are you going to do all these things? You got to pay attention to the feet, the eyes, the looking around, the steering. And now we go from point A to point B, and we're not even aware we've done it.
Unfortunately, sometimes we're not aware. I think one of the things, in having had the privilege of being a field instructor at other institutions and other states, the experience, with the rare exception that I have, is that students are so much more critical of themselves than I think field instructors are of the students. And I think one of the things that you and I have spent some time on is getting you to move to go ahead. As you said, if it's a mistake, it's something to learn from. But oftentimes those efforts turn out to be the right thing to do, and you still can be critical of yourself, and I think that's a real struggle for students.
Yeah.
We grant, freedom, if you will. We say, okay, here, take a shot at it, and I think this is something, I guess I'm speaking directly to field instructors, is just because we say it and say, here, this is open, there are no errors, there are no mistakes, I mean, this is a learning experience. You've got to remember that students are going to probably be more critical of themselves than what we are going to be.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.